Hey guys, thank you so much for flapping on over here to the Awesome Padron show. Just a few days ago, what is today? Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday. So on Saturday we did a double feature.
Barbenheimer.
Yeah, I don't know if it's hard to tell what other movies we saw on that day, but we saw Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna go ahead and talk about Barbie right now, which is really a movie that both of us have been looking forward to for a while. We're really big fans of Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach.
Yeah.
And we're also big fans of Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. I am a massive fan of the guy.
Right. Honestly, I am surprised that he's not in more comedies.
Yeah.
Especially after seeing him in The Nice Guys.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Which is a very underrated movie.
Yeah, it is. If you haven't seen The Nice Guys, check it out. It's fantastic. It's like one of the best comedies of all time, in my opinion. But, that being said, I will start off by saying Ryan Gosling, probably my favorite part of this whole movie.
Yeah.
By the trailers, I was kind of expecting that, but Ryan Gosling is hilarious, and the way that Ryan Gosling does comedy is very subtle. It's like most of the time how comedy works the best is like the actor is portraying a character that is not trying to be comedic.
Right.
And that's when it works best. And honestly, Ryan Gosling is fantastic at that type of comedy.
Yeah. His comedic timing is kind of perfect. He's great at playing these like goofy characters like Ken in this movie, and then his character in The Nice Guy. He's just like perfect at those kind of characters.
And then I feel like Margot Robbie is a fantastic choice for Barbie. I know a little bit ago because they've been talking about making this Barbie movie for quite some time now.
Yeah.
Whenever it first was announced, I think they had like Amy Schumer attached as Barbie.
Really?
Yeah, you don't remember that?
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't remember if I remember that or if I just think I remember it from you saying it.
Yeah. They had Amy Schumer attached to this at first, and honestly,
we dodged a bullet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, honestly, in general. I don't like Amy Schumer. I feel like she is and I'm not trying to go to a random Amy Schumer rant. I just feel like she's one of the worst comedians, and I feel like there's a lot way better female comedians that need to take her spot in that. And she's kind of dwindling down. But anyways. She was attached to it at first, and now they got Margot Robbie. I think Margot Robbie is a perfect choice for this role. And I think one of my favorite things about this movie is the production design is pretty great in this movie.
Oh yeah, sure.
I think this movie does fantastic at world building. Like this whole world, this Barbie world that they're all living in. It's done really well.
Right. Yeah. And it definitely seems like somebody made this movie who really liked Barbie because of all the different products and stuff that they brought up. Like, especially because like before this movie came out, some of the promotional stuff that they released, like I saw like articles that like were like different like actual Barbie products that they included in this movie, little nuggets and stuff that they included. It was kind of cool. And then like you said, the production design making everything look like a Barbie set.
Yeah, like
and just the colors and everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of effort. It wasn't just a movie where they're like, oh, this is just Barbie, it's for kids. Like, this movie, warning, this movie really isn't for kids.
Yeah, it's rated PG-13, so just heed that.
Yeah, but like they could have just like kind of not given as much effort, but the production design was a lot of effort in it. I also heard that this movie used so much pink that there's like a national shortage of pink,
really?
Like pink paint, because of how much pink was in this movie.
That's pretty hilarious.
Yeah. And for a good chunk of this movie, or at least like I would say for most of this movie, the writing is a lot deeper than you would expect it to be. I would say I was kind of expecting a deeper writing, knowing Noah Baumbach and knowing Greta Gerwig, and also knowing that I think Simu Liu said something like his junior agent said like he would bet his whole career on this.
Yeah, the script.
On the script, like it's like one of the greatest scripts he'd ever read or something like that. So like that's why Simu Liu like went on it and like auditioned for it. Also, I really do like we're saying Ryan Gosling, Margot Robbie. There's a lot of people behind this movie that really made me realize like, oh, this movie's not going to just be some Barbie movie,
right?
So that part wasn't too surprising to me. But if you go into this movie not knowing anything about Greta Gerwig or Noah Baumbach, you might get a little more than you're expecting for, like a little deeper of a movie, maybe even a little bit more emotional of a movie.
Which, if y'all don't know, Noah Baumbach wrote movies like Marriage Story and White Noise, which I don't know how many people saw that movie that came out last year. And then Greta Gerwig obviously directed Lady Bird and Little Women, which are both critically acclaimed.
Yeah, exactly. And so the writing of this movie, for a good chunk of it, is pretty good, and I do think that it mixes well with like the quirkiness of this movie. Obviously there's a quirkiness to this movie, and they blend it together with like this existentialism idea, and they kind of blend those two together in this movie that works pretty well. And as far as the humor goes, I feel like the humor really worked, especially in the first half. We did talk about the existentialism and the kind of the quirkiness kind of coming together, and those really come together to create the humor of this movie. And it works really well, like I said, especially in the first half.
I liked how a lot of it got kind of meta.
Oh yeah, exactly. Too, yeah, it got really meta. They came up with a lot of interesting ideas and regarding how like it wasn't just a movie where like Barbie goes into the real world. Like that happens, but like they do a little bit extra with it. That was kind of interesting. And they bring, like you said, they bring up a lot of little nuggets where like in the past with like past Barbie, like I won't go into like details, but one of the main ones, and you see for the trailer, is like Alan, Alan played by Michael Cera. Right. Like he was like a one-off doll. Like you have all these Kens, all these Barbies, but then they made one Alan. So that was like it, you know? So most of the humor does work in this movie, especially in that first half. But I will say, I do think the humor and a lot of stuff kind of drops down in the second half. I do think there's a decent amount of good humor in the second half, but I do think the humor does decrease in the second half. Yeah, and
that does kind of lead me to my negatives. And I will say this movie, as much as it pains me to say, it really did kind of disappoint me, just overall. The first half of the movie, I did kind of pretty enjoy. It wasn't like one of my favorite movies or anything, but I was enjoying myself for like the first half. But then it got really unfocused like towards the middle of the movie. Yeah. And especially like once she like goes into the world, a little bit after she goes into the real world is whenever it kind of like starts dwindling down in quality. I just felt like it started getting a lot more unfocused. I feel like the humor started going down a little bit. A lot of the jokes didn't really land. As much as they were in the first half, and just the quality just started going down overall.
And I do think a lot of my problems primarily come from the fact that I feel like the second half was very rushed. I feel like this movie could have done a few things to make this better. I think they either could have refocused the movie, or they could have added more time on. Because when it comes to refocusing, one of my main issues is I feel like there is hinted at a conflict between two characters that are brought up like somewhere roughly in the middle of the movie. And I feel like it's almost solved so quickly that you don't even notice it's solving.
Right, yeah, there's no like full like explanation of it being solved. It just happens. Like it's solved within like 5 minutes, like 2 scenes of it existing, it's solved. And it seemed like it's gonna be like a big part of the movie. Yeah. But then it's just like solved immediately so they can move on to the next thing.
And I feel like if they focused on that a little more, that could have been a really interesting story. And I really don't want to go into spoilers on what we're talking about. Maybe we'll do like a small spoiler at the end of this to kind of just quickly to kind of explain what we're talking about right here. But I feel like that could have been really interesting. If they didn't do that, I feel like they could have made it a little bit longer to do something else, because I feel like after the middle of the movie, there's a part whenever there's another conflict created. This conflict, I feel like, is built up a little more in the middle of the movie. So this conflict is created, and that kind of becomes the main point of the movie. My main problem with that is very rushed.
Yeah, it's kind of like crammed into this movie all of a sudden.
yeah, it's kind of just crammed in there, and then it's just kind of solved like, it feels really quickly how quickly it's solved.
Yeah, a lot like the earlier conflict we were just talking about. It just kind of solved this all of a sudden.
and what's irritating is I feel like when it's solved, the resolution and stuff that happens afterwards is kind of interesting. It's kind of I do like what happens after that conflict is resolved.
Yeah.
It brings up some really interesting points. But I feel like this movie was like, it's almost like it was written and then they had a time constraint and then they just shortened the last half of it down completely. And I feel like if they had just lengthened it a little bit more, kind of done a little bit more with that last half, the feeling of that last half would have had a lot more impact.
Right. Yeah, and also with that whole conflict, like there's things that were happening after they introduced that conflict, but for a good chunk of it, didn't feel like really anything was happening. Like they had like a musical number, they had this big like set piece and everything, but it never really felt like anything was happening. And my brain kind of checked. I mean, I was still paying attention, but my brain kind of checked out for a little bit there. I feel like they could have done that a whole lot better. And also going along with that conflict at the end, I feel like the message of that whole part and the whole message of that whole like third act of the movie is really important. I'm not saying it's not, but it got really heavy-handed with how they were trying to convey this message. Yeah. It almost started becoming just like a TED Talk almost. Yeah. To where they're just like saying what they wanted the message to be. It's like, okay, exactly. What's that? Yeah. Really heavy-handed.
Yeah, there was no sense of like nuance with it, which does go into the fact that I think that last half, if they would have added like a good, I feel like maybe, honestly, let's go back a little bit. What they could have done is taken out Will Ferrell's entire character.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Will Ferrell's entire character did practically nothing in this movie. Yeah. I'll say anything that he did that affected the plot was so minimal that they could have figured out something else to do.
Exactly. And not only that, but his character honestly wasn't that funny to me, which I usually really like Will Ferrell. I think Will Ferrell's pretty hilarious. I love a lot of his movies. But his character just wasn't that funny, and then none of the characters that worked for him were funny at all either, in my opinion. So like, yeah, he could have been like completely taken out of the movie. Yeah, and it wouldn't have changed much. And it would have saved a lot of time.
Yeah, because I would say he took out probably what do you think, like 10 or 15 minutes, maybe, right?
Yeah, a good chunk.
Yeah, I think that if they would have taken his character out of there, because to be honest, there was already conflict happening. There's already a conflict building up that leads into that second half of the movie. And I feel like if they took him out, maybe added 10 or 15 more minutes for a total of 30 minutes added on to the movie, I feel like the ending could have been pretty good because it would have had more of a sense of nuance. It would have really been a lot more impactful. Because like I said, after that whole conflict happens, the resolution and kind of what some of the characters realize about themselves was kind of a cool touch. I didn't mind that at all. I liked it. But leading up to that, it was just so quick. You know, it was just so quick. It was almost like and I know it wasn't because it was kind of obvious what it was building up to, but it was almost like the conflict, or at least how big the conflict was like a last minute decision. But I will say that this movie honestly is pretty decently enjoyable, especially in the first half. And honestly, even like the second half, even though I have my problems with it, I can see why people like it. I'll also say this. If any of you pieces of garbage come in our comment section at all and think that we are saying this movie is trash because it's woke, get out of our comment sections, you idiot. All right? We are not saying that. Wokeness has nothing to do with the quality of a movie. It has nothing to do with the quality of the writing. It has nothing to do with directing. It has nothing to do with filmmaking. Okay? We are not saying that. We're saying that the ending was not written that well. But everything could have been kind of stayed the same. Okay?
Right, yeah. There's a difference.
Yeah.
The message was important, just not executed well.
Yeah. Also, real quick rant, right? Saying that a movie is bad because it's woke is such a lazy criticism. It's such a smooth-brained, lazy criticism that I can't even consider an argument. Okay? Because there's no argument there. It's just a word that you're just tossing in there, hoping to make a point and sound smart. Like a buzzword. But you actually sound like a complete idiot. So, just wanted to say that. Freaking Ben Shapiro.
Oh, yeah, I know.
When he had to say, oh, my friends dragged me out to go see Barbie or something like that. And saying it was like the most woke piece of garbage. And
yeah, the most woke movie.
The most woke movie. And yeah, I'm like, man, like, It's not an argument.
Yeah.
It's not an argument. If you don't like a movie, that's fine. But at least come up with something like an actual argument. And I just want to bring up one quick spoiler. So if you don't want to hear the spoiler, just go to this time right here to get to our grades. But the spoiler I want to talk about is we kind of hinted at it earlier, is that in the middle, somewhere around the middle of the movie, they bring up two characters, and we felt like this something was solved really fast. Mm-hmm. What we're talking about is America Ferrera and her daughter. It felt like they were hinting at, and I would say, honestly, I said hint, but I would say that it was a little bit more than hinting. You know, they kind of showed that maybe the relationship between the two was kind of dropping. Like, America Ferrera used to play Barbie with her daughter, and her daughter didn't like Barbies anymore and all this stuff. And it just felt like their relationship needed mending, you know? And I felt like that was going to kind of be the point. Would have been a little cliched, yeah, maybe, but I felt like it was going to be the point, because what's going on is that Barbie is trying to figure out what she needs to solve in order to close the, what was it, like the continuum. I can't remember.
I can't remember.
It's like close the gate, I guess.
Yeah, like the portal or whatever.
Yeah, and so she's trying to find her owner. You know, trying to find the person who plays with her and stuff like that to kind of solve something with her. But I kind of feel like they never really make the connection of why what she did with that mother closed anything. Yeah. You know? Because she kind of meets up with the mother, and then at the end, she talks to like the old lady, like the ghost of the creator of Barbie or something like that. Right. And she moves Barbie over, and I guess the gate closes, and so something like that, you know. So it never really feels like they were ever brought in for a reason. And I thought that the reason was going to be she needs to help mend that relationship, because when she mends that relationship, she'll help the mother be happier and help that the two worlds colliding stop. Right. But they never actually do that. And the relationship between the mother and daughter they never really actually do anything. It's kind of like a little bit off, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, we're good. Yeah, they just make up just all of a sudden. Yeah. Without anything really causing it. Yeah. It's just solved immediately. Yeah, and I think it's because they had a second conflict in mind with Ryan Gosling, or with Ken trying to take over Barbie Land. So that was their main focus. But nothing ever happens to where like, oh, okay, that's where that's whenever the gate closed or whatever. And I felt like that could have been a really interesting story aspect that they kind of just threw to the side. We are going to say that Barbie is 50% awesome. Well, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, comment, let us know what you thought about Barbie, and maybe even let us know what you liked more between Barbie and Oppenheimer if you saw both of them. And don't forget to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, all at The Awesome Padron Show. And we both have individual TikToks, which we'll put down below. Yeah, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.